The spray can hissed in William's hand as he worked under the dim glow of a streetlight in Brooklyn's warehouse district. 3 in the morning, his favorite time, when the city finally exhaled and he could breathe. No eyes to witness his stutter, no ears to hear his broken sentences. Just him, the wall, and colors that spoke volumes he couldn't articulate with his voice. William pulled his hoodie tighter around his face as a distant siren wailed. At 24, he'd perfected the art of invisibility. The dark grey fabric had become both shield and prison. Just finish this section, he whispered to himself, attacking the concrete canvas with practiced precision. His latest piece was taking shape, a child reaching for a microphone that transformed into a flock of birds. His most personal work yet. The stutter had followed William since childhood, a constant companion alongside the memories of his father's impatience. "Spit it out, boy," his father would bark whenever William tried to speak at the dinner table. Each interruption cemented the belief that his words weren't worth waiting for. After his parents' bitter divorce and his mother's struggle with depression, the hoodie became his armor against a world that moved too fast for his halting speech. Dawn approached as William added the final details to his mural. He stepped back, chest tight with a familiar mix of pride and fear. His art spoke clearly, even if he couldn't. As he packed his supplies, a notification lit up his phone. The city had announced a neighborhood beautification project targeting unsanctioned public art in this district. William's stomach knotted as he read the details. Work would begin in 3 weeks, erasing years of street art, including his most meaningful pieces. That afternoon, William dragged himself to his job at Riverside Art Supply, a small independent store that had become his refuge. The owner, Eleanor, a 60-something former art teacher with silver hair and a perpetual paint smudge somewhere on her clothing, was the rare person who gave him the time to finish his sentences. "They're gonna paint over everything," William said, arranging a display of brushes while avoiding Eleanor's gaze. "The city council meeting is tomorrow night," Eleanor replied, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Artists are planning to attend. You should go." William shook his head immediately. "I can't speak in front of people." "Your art already speaks, Will. Maybe it's time you stood beside it." The bell above the door chimed as a customer entered. William tugged his hood lower and retreated to the stockroom, his safe space. Through the door's small window, he observed a young woman with a camera slung over her shoulder, talking animatedly with Eleanor. Her enthusiasm seemed to fill the small shop as she gestured toward a flyer on the counter. "He's incredible, whoever this artist is," he overheard her say. "I'm doing a feature on street art under threat from the beautification project, and his work is exactly what I need to highlight." William froze when Eleanor glanced toward the stockroom. "She wouldn't, would she?" "Maya Torres," the woman continued, handing Eleanor a business card. "I work for Urban Pulse. If you know this artist, please have him contact me. This could help the cause." That night, William couldn't sleep. His apartment walls were covered with sketches, ideas that never made it to the streets. He stared at Eleanor's text message with the journalist's contact information, his thumb hovering over the delete button. The thought of speaking to a reporter made his throat close up, but the image of his murals vanishing beneath generic beige paint was equally suffocating. At 2 a.m. he gave up on sleep and slipped out into the night. He found himself back at his latest mural, now potentially on borrowed time. As he traced the lines with his fingers, a voice behind him nearly sent him jumping out of his skin. "So you're the mysterious artist." William spun around to find the woman from the art store, Maya, standing a few feet away, camera in hand, her expression a mix of triumph and genuine admiration. "I followed a hunch," she explained, approaching slowly as if afraid he might bolt. "Eleanor didn't give you up, but I've been documenting street art for years. I recognize patterns. Your work has a distinctive voice." William pulled his hoodie tighter, feeling exposed. "I don't do interviews," he managed. Maya lowered her camera. "What if you didn't have to speak?" she asked. What if your art could do the talking? For the first time in years, William felt a flicker of something dangerous. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to save his work without facing his greatest fear. As the night air wrapped around them, William made a decision that would pull him from the shadows, whether he was ready or not. "I'm Maya," she said, mimicking his stutter with a gentle smile. "And you are—" The unexpected gesture caught him off guard, loosening something in his chest. "William," he replied, and for once the stutter felt less like a barrier and more like part of his name. "Well, William," Maya said, turning to admire his mural, "I think it's time Brooklyn knew your story, if you're brave enough to tell it." As dawn crept over the Brooklyn skyline, painting the warehouse walls in hues of orange and gold, William stood at a crossroads. Continue hiding in the safety of anonymity, or step into the light and fight for his art, his voice, and perhaps himself. The hoodie suddenly felt heavier than it ever had before. The community center buzzed with tension as William slipped into the back row, hoodie pulled low. The city council meeting about the Urban Renewal Initiative had drawn a larger crowd than expected. Artists, business owners, and residents packed the room. His palms were slick with sweat as he spotted Maya near the front, her notebook open and pen poised. "The beautification project will increase property values and reduce crime rates," announced Councilman Richard Hargrove, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Behind him, a sleek presentation displayed before and after mock-ups of William's neighborhood, vibrant street art replaced with uniform murals of historical figures and landscapes. "We've commissioned appropriate artwork that celebrates our city's heritage," Hargrove continued, emphasizing appropriate with unmistakable disdain. "The current unsanctioned graffiti sends the wrong message about our community." Anger flared in William's chest, a foreign, uncomfortable heat. His artwork wasn't random tagging. It told stories of struggle, identity, and belonging. Stories that resonated with people who, like him, often went unheard. Eleanor, seated a few rows ahead, stood up. "That graffiti brings tourists to our neighborhood. It's why many of our businesses survive. And it gives voice to communities traditionally excluded from public art decisions," Maya added, rising to her feet. "I've been documenting these artists for my Urban Pulse series. Their work reflects authentic experiences that your commissioned pieces won't capture." Hargrove's smile didn't reach his eyes. "While we appreciate the enthusiasm, this decision has already received preliminary approval. We're simply informing the community of the timeline." As the meeting progressed, William's heart hammered against his ribs. Artists and residents took turns at the microphone, defending the cultural significance of street art, but Hargrove and the other council members remained unmoved. The project would begin in 3 weeks, starting with the warehouse district, where William's most personal mural stood. "Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?" asked the council secretary as the meeting wound down. Maya turned, scanning the room until her eyes found William. She raised an eyebrow. A silent question, a gentle challenge. William shrank deeper into his seat, shaking his head slightly. Not today, not yet. Outside, the evening air provided little relief from William's churning thoughts. He lingered near the building entrance, watching as Maya interviewed several artists for her feature. "You missed your chance in there," came Eleanor's voice as she exited the building. "But it's not too late." "What do you mean?" William asked, shuffling his feet. "Maya's feature. It could make a difference." Eleanor squeezed his arm gently. "Your art matters, Will, but so does the artist." Later that night, William found himself at his threatened mural again. The piece depicted a boy with a fractured face being pieced back together by his own hands, William's representation of his journey to reclaim his identity after years of feeling broken by his stutter and family trauma. "I knew I'd find you here," Maya said, approaching from the shadows. "You know, for someone who tries to be invisible, your presence is remarkably consistent." William managed a small smile despite his nervousness. Just saying goodbye, I guess. Maya leaned against the wall beside him. It doesn't have to be goodbye. My editor loves what I've written so far. If I can include the artist's perspective, your perspective, it could create real pressure on the council. I can't do interviews, William insisted. My stutter. There are other ways, Maya interrupted. Written responses, voice notes you can edit, or... She paused, studying his expression. You could show me your process. I could document how you create. Sometimes actions speak louder than words. Something about her persistence penetrated William's defenses. Unlike others who grew impatient with his halting speech, Maya seemed genuinely interested in finding alternative paths of communication. Why do you care so much? He asked. Maya's expression softened. My brother had a severe stutter. Art was his outlet too, until... She trailed off. Let's just say I understand what it means to need a different way to speak your truth. The revelation shifted something in William's perception. Her interest wasn't pity or mere journalistic opportunity. It was personal. One session, he conceded finally. No face shots. Maya's smile bloomed. Tomorrow night, I know a wall that could use your touch, legally sanctioned, I promise. The following evening, William met Maya at an authorized art wall behind a community center in Red Hook. His anxiety spiked when he saw she wasn't alone. A videographer adjusted lighting equipment as they approached. Just you, William stammered, halting in his tracks. That was the deal. Just documentation, no interview, Maya assured him. Carlos won't film your face, but people need to see your hands at work, Will. That's where the magic happens. After tense negotiation and Carlos's solemn promise to respect his privacy, William reluctantly agreed. As he began to paint, an unexpected calm descended. The familiar rhythm of creation, the hiss of the spray can, the deliberate movements, the emerging image, gradually eclipsed his self-consciousness. Maya observed silently, occasionally whispering questions that William answered in brief, stuttered phrases that somehow felt less burdensome in the flow of creation. 3 hours later, a new piece emerged, a person shedding layers of blank masks with words hidden in the negative space. See me, not my silence. It's powerful, Maya said quietly. You're powerful, William. The unexpected compliment warmed something long cold inside him. For a brief moment, William stood a little straighter, his hoodie falling back slightly as he surveyed his work with Maya beside him. That night, checking his phone before bed, William found a message from Maya with a link to a preliminary cut of the video. His finger hesitated over the play button, fear and curiosity warring within him. Finally, he pressed play. The short clip showed his hands at work, the mural taking shape, set to instrumental music that somehow captured the emotion behind his creation. The final shot panned out to show him from behind, hoodie down, facing his completed work, vulnerable yet strong. For the first time in years, William saw himself as others might see him, not defined by his stutter, but by what he created. The artist, not the affliction. As sleep finally came, the weight of his hoodie seemed just a little lighter than before. William's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Maya's feature, The Invisible Artist, Brooklyn's Voice, Behind the Hood, had gone live on Urban Pulse's website overnight and was gaining traction. The video of his painting process had already accumulated thousands of views. You've got to see this, Will, Eleanor texted, followed by a stream of links to social media posts about his work. People were sharing images of his murals across the city, adding hashtags like Just Save Brooklyn Art and Who is Hooded Artist. At work, William noticed customers whispering as they glanced at their phones, some looking around the store with newfound interest. Had they recognized his work? Did they suspect the quiet stockroom guy might be the artist everyone was talking about? Your 15 minutes of fame, Eleanor said with a wink as she handed him a stack of flyers. People are organizing a protest this weekend against the beautification project. They're using your mural as the gathering point. William's stomach lurched. I didn't ask for this. No, Eleanor agreed. But sometimes the universe decides it's time for us to be heard, whether we're ready or not. That afternoon, Councilman Hargrove issued a statement doubling down on the beautification project, dismissing the growing online movement as a vocal minority of outside agitators. The timeline would proceed as planned, with Williams' warehouse district slated for repainting in just 10 days. Maya called that evening. "We're making noise, but it's not enough," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "Hargrove's calling our bluff. He thinks the artist won't step forward, and without that personal element, the story will fade." William paced his small apartment, anxiety clawing at his chest. "What more can I do?" "There's a council subcommittee meeting tomorrow," Maya replied. "Smaller audience, less formal. If you could just—" No, William cut her off. "I can't speak in public. You know that." The silence on the line stretched uncomfortably before Maya spoke again. "What if I interviewed you on camera? Just your hands, your art, and we played it at the meeting. Your voice, your terms." The idea sent cold fear down William's spine, but a competing emotion was growing stronger: determination. His artwork had given voice to his innermost thoughts for years. Perhaps it was time to let that voice reach beyond the walls he painted. "Oh, okay," he agreed, surprising himself. "But we'd do it my way." The next morning they met at William's apartment. For the first time, he allowed someone into his private space. Walls covered with sketches, shelves lined with art books and spray cans, a life lived in color despite his outward gray existence. Maya set up her equipment while William prepared what he wanted to say. He'd been practicing all night, writing and rewriting his thoughts. Even so, his heart raced as Maya adjusted the camera to frame his hands, but not his face. "Whenever you're ready," she said softly, pressing record. William's hands trembled as he began to sketch while speaking. My name is William Chen," he started, his stutter pronounced, but pushing through it. "I've been painting Brooklyn's walls for 6 years. As he continued sketching, a self-portrait emerging on paper, his speech remained halting, but his message clear. He explained how art had become his voice when words failed him, how each mural represented stories of people like him, overlooked, judged by appearances or differences, but with depths worth discovering. "The mural they want to paint over first," he explained, his pencil strokes becoming bolder, "is about finding wholeness after feeling broken. It's my story, but it's also the story of anyone who's had to piece themselves back together." To William's surprise, the more he spoke about his art, the more fluid his words became. The stutter remained, but it no longer controlled him. When he finished, nearly 30 minutes had passed. "That was—" Maya wiped a tear from her cheek. "That was beautiful, Will." That afternoon, Maya attended the subcommittee meeting while William waited anxiously at home. She texted updates throughout. "Packed room despite being a weekday afternoon. Hargrove looks annoyed by the turnout. Playing your video now." William paced his apartment, imagining strangers hearing his stuttered words, seeing his art take shape, learning his story. The vulnerability was excruciating, even from a distance. Maya's final text came an hour later. "They're reconsidering the warehouse district section. Hargrove's outnumbered. Small victory, but not over yet. Call you soon." The following days brought a whirlwind of developments. Maya's feature went viral, picked up by national arts publications. Local businesses near William's murals began displaying "Save Our Street Art" signs. A renowned gallery owner expressed interest in showing William's work, the authentic voice of Brooklyn's streets. Yet with growing attention came mounting anxiety. William had carefully controlled his exposure in the video, but people were becoming curious about the artist behind the hoodie. How long before his carefully constructed anonymity crumbled completely? "You can't hide forever," Eleanor told him gently as they closed the shop one evening. "Especially not now." What if people don't want to hear me once they know how I sound?" William asked, voicing his deepest fear. Eleanor's eyes softened. "Oh, Will, they're already hearing you. The stutter is just the accent of your particular voice. Later that night, William received a call from an unfamiliar number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Is this William Chen?" asked a deep voice. "Who's asking?" William replied cautiously. "James Wilson. I own the building with your fractured face mural," the man said. "Council's been pressuring me to let their painters start early, before all this protest business gets bigger, offering tax incentives too." William's heart sank. "And you're going to take it?" "Actually," Wilson said, "I called to ask if you'd consider expanding the piece. The wall next to it is empty. If we can classify it as a commissioned work in progress, they might have to exclude it from the immediate plan." It was a lifeline William hadn't expected, a chance to protect his most personal work while creating something new. As the call ended, William felt something shift inside him. People weren't just seeing his art, they were standing beside him. Perhaps it was time he stood alongside them too. The weekend protest was scheduled for noon. By 11, hundreds had gathered near William's mural. Artists, neighbors, families with children, local business owners. Maya moved through the crowd, interviewing participants, her face alight with purpose. William watched from across the street, hood pulled low, heart pounding. Signs bearing images of his work and slogans about community voice rose above the crowd. A makeshift stage had been set up, where speakers took turns addressing the gathering. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Where are you? People are asking if the artist will appear." William's thumbs hovered over his phone. 6 years of hiding, of letting his art speak, while he remained silent. 6 years of believing his stutter made his voice unworthy of being heard. Across the street, Eleanor took the microphone. "Art is how we tell the world we exist," she was saying. "When you erase street art, you're erasing the voices of those who may have no other way to speak." In that moment, William made his decision. With trembling fingers, he texted Maya, "I'm ready." The crowd parted as William approached the makeshift stage, his steps hesitant but determined. For once, his hoodie was pulled back, revealing his face, a 20-something Asian American man with intense eyes and nervous expression. Maya spotted him first, her smile blooming with pride and surprise as she hurried to meet him. "You sure about this?" she whispered, squeezing his arm. William nodded, unable to form words, as the reality of what he was about to do crashed over him. Hundreds of eyes turned toward him, curious murmurs rippling through the gathering. He recognized faces from his neighborhood, the barista who made his daily coffee, the elderly couple who walked their corgi past his favorite walls, even his mail carrier, people whose paths had crossed his for years without truly seeing him. Eleanor stepped back from the microphone, eyes wide with emotion as she recognized William. "It's your stage," she said softly. The journey to the microphone felt like miles. William's legs trembled as he took position, staring out at the sea of expectant faces. His mouth went dry. The familiar tightness gripped his throat, the precursor to his stutter that had haunted him since childhood. He began, then froze as the word caught. The silence stretched painfully. Some in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. In that moment of panic, William's eyes found the mural behind the crowd, his fractured face piece, the boy with broken pieces coming together through his own hands, his story, his truth. Taking a deep breath, William tried again. My name is William Chen," he said, his stutter prominent, but his voice steady. "I'm the artist behind the hood." A ripple of excitement moved through the crowd. Phones raised to capture the moment. William gripped the microphone stand for support, knuckles white with tension. "I started painting these walls because I couldn't find my voice," he continued, each word a battle but one he was determined to win. "When you stutter, people either finish your sentences or walk away. But walls are patient. They wait for your story." As he spoke, something remarkable happened. The crowd leaned in, collectively holding space for his words. No one interrupted. No one completed his thoughts. They simply listened, truly listened, perhaps for the first time in his life. "This mural," William gestured to the fractured face, is about all of us who've felt be broken by expectations, by differences, by loss. His stutter remained, but the shame that usually accompanied it began to dissolve in the warm attention of the crowd. Art heals those fractures, not by hiding them, but by making them part of something beautiful. A spontaneous applause broke out. William faltered, unused to positive attention, then continued with growing confidence. When the city paints over these walls, they're not just covering graffiti, they're silencing stories that deserve to be told. He looked directly at the news cameras now, stories of people who might not speak the way you expect, but who still have something to say. By the time William finished speaking, a 4-minute address that had taken every ounce of his courage, the crowd's energy had transformed from supportive to electrified. Chants of "Save our walls, hear our voices" rose around him as he stepped back from the microphone, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. Maya was the first to reach him, wrapping him in a tight hug. "I knew you could do it," she whispered fiercely. Eleanor was next, her eyes shining with tears. "The art supply kid has surprises," she said with a watery smile. The protest continued around them, gaining momentum as William's speech spread across social media. By evening, local news stations were carrying the story, featuring clips of the formerly anonymous artist revealing himself and speaking passionately despite his stutter. 3 days later, Councilman Hargrove called an emergency press conference. Facing mounting public pressure and unwelcome media attention, the council announced a modified approach to the beautification project. "We've heard the community's concerns," Hargrove stated stiffly, clearly unhappy with the concession. "The Urban Renewal Initiative will proceed with community input. Existing murals of significant artistic or cultural value will be preserved, with local artists participating in the selection process." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. William's warehouse district, including his fractured face mural, would be spared. More importantly, a community advisory board would be formed, with William invited to serve as a representative for street artists. That evening, William stood before his mural with Maya, Eleanor, and a small gathering of supporters who had become friends through the movement. "What's next for the artist who came out from behind the hood?" Maya asked, her reporter's notebook open, but her question more personal than professional. William considered the wall before him, no longer just his private canvas, but a public statement of identity and resilience. The past weeks had transformed him in ways he was still processing. His stutter remained, but its power over him had diminished. He had spoken, been heard, and found that the world didn't end. "I'm gonna finish this piece," he said, gesturing to the adjacent wall that building owner James Wilson had offered. "But this time, I'll work in daylight." The next morning, William arrived at the wall without his hoodie for the first time. A small crowd had gathered to watch, including several young people who approached shyly to express their admiration. "I stutter too," confessed a teenage boy, his words halting in a familiar rhythm. "Never thought someone like us could do something like this." William smiled, recognizing his younger self in the boy's averted eyes and hunched shoulders. "Want to help?" he asked, offering a spray can. As they worked side by side, William's phone buzzed with a notification. Maya had published her final piece in the series, From Hidden to Heard, How One Artist Reclaimed His Voice. Accompanying the article was a full portrait of William, face uncovered, eyes meeting the camera directly, standing proudly beside his work. The Brooklyn air felt different against his exposed face, cooler, fresher somehow. William adjusted the cap on his spray can and turned to the wall before him, no longer a place to hide his voice, but a platform to amplify it. The mural taking shape showed a figure stepping forward, hoodie falling back, surrounded by fragments of sound visualized as color. Speech, regardless of its rhythm, transformed into beauty. "Is it weird?" Eleanor asked, arriving with coffee for him and his young assistant. "Being recognized on the street now?" William considered the question as he added detail to his piece. It's strange, he admitted, but also kind of wonderful. What changed? She pressed gently. You spent years hiding. What made you finally step forward? William paused, spray can suspended mid-air as he formulated his answer. I realized my stutter is just how my voice sounds, not who I am. He turned to face her fully. And who I am is someone with something to say. As afternoon sunlight illuminated his work, William stepped back to gain perspective on the emerging mural. The figure on the wall looked back at him, no longer fractured, no longer hidden, owning his story at last. Just like its creator,